Another day of quarantine in sunny Arizona. I remember when I began to understand the basic footprint of Iaido. My first Iaido style was called Seitei Gata from the All Japan Kendo Federation. It is the most practiced sword kata series in Japan with millions of kendoists, people who practice kendo. This series was pounded into me for years, and a well-practiced kendoist could easily demonstrate the seitei or the two-man kumitachi series with the same timing, rhythm, speed, and posture as any of their fellow kendoists, which meant you could travel throughout Japan's archipelago of 6,852 islands and get in a good game of kendo. During this time, Shizawa sensei, my kendo teacher, or one of my kendo teachers at Nihon Taiku Daigaku back in the 1980s, wow, he was a real stickler about protocol and simplicity. He also showed me pointers and visualizations on how to manage the sword into and out of the sheath. Shizawa sensei said, I have several points of focus you need to understand. The first is to make sure your posture is good and your back is straight. The second is to become extremely familiar with the way the sheath travels along your waist. The third is that your hands come from underneath to lessen the telegraphing of your thoughts and intentions. 4, it's not about drawing the sword from the sheath, it's about drawing the sheath away from the sword. And of course 5, the movement of the blade into and out of the sheath should be lined up with each other and move as smooth as a piston gliding in and out of a cylinder. Shizawa sensei then says, now I will show you what to focus on in these 5 points from a seiza position that will help you more readily understand the mechanics of drawing and sheathing. Therefore, let's get in a seiza position. The first point is discovering your posture and keeping your back straight. He hands me this bokuto and says, balance this on your head like this. Now your posture will improve as you use your spine as an axis to rotate from, and your head won't lean forward as much. Second, be controlled and mature with simplicity. It's the controlled, consistent, and polished draw or sheath that is strived for, mainly because of the controlled tension you have to maintain with your left hand wringing the sheath along your waist, which is about a 12-inch strip from the front to the rear of the hip. Sort of like keeping your fingers on the cloth like this and rubbing your fingers on the cloth. Keep the same fingers down here, because if your fingers go away from the cloth, then your sheathing won't be as consistent as it could be. The sheath rotates outward and back when the sword is being drawn from a vertical to horizontal, and the sheath rotates inward as it moves forward from horizontal back to vertical when returned, rotating about a quarter turn or 90 degrees when moving back and forth. Third, when your hands grip the handle from underneath, it keeps the elbows, the shoulders from rising and telegraphing. This, in turn, creates a tighter angle of attack when drawing the sword from the sheath. Look at my grip. I'm not gripping from the side as much, I'm gripping from underneath and using this like a trombone slide as I move it in and out to stay consistent and make sure my muscle and my posture don't have any unneeded moves that will telegraph my thoughts and intentions. 4. Instead, draw the sheath backwards and away from the sword. The straighter your back is, the easier you can draw and sheath. In this fashion, you can rotate it slightly and corkscrew the blade into and out of the sheath, as thus the sword and sheath will both stay parallel to the ground, especially since you have the blade's curve and sheath to consider. Remember, there's a little bitty sodi here, or a curve, and you have to take that in consideration, making sure the draw is consistent, 5. And this is an important one. When you are drawing and sheathing the sword, your hands and fingers must be vigilant to create a simple piston type movement gliding along your hand and into and out of the sheath. Shizawa sensei then says, dwell on these 5 points to create proper movement and technique, which will assist you when you draw and sheathe the sword in the future.